Welcome back to Touring the AFC South. I'm your host, Mike Patton, and of course, the coaching carousel has stopped in a few places, but one place it has not stopped spinning is Jacksonville, unfortunately. Now, to make some sense of the whole coaching search down there and the whole situation that's going on down there, I figured I'd bring up my good friend, John Reid, Florida Times Union's Jags beat reporter. How you doing, man?
Man, I'm doing good, but boy, I don't know if I'm covering a circus or what's going on with this coaching search, man. Never had anything like this before in my career.
So, I just want to ask, how many coaches have they actually interviewed so far?
12
12.
with
Wow.
Doug Peterson getting the second interview today. That makes 12.
Goodness gracious. So Doug Peterson is in the mix now.
Yeah, he was the first guy they interviewed on the 28th of December. And
Mm-hmm.
from my sources, they had little or no contact from the first interview until now.
Goodness
So
gracious.
basically, we've had a search where it's basically started, restarted, and who knows, man? I mean, it might be another restart.
Oh my goodness. Now, of course, let's talk about the name that everybody's talking about
Yep.
with this job.
Yep.
That'd be Byron Leftwich. Of course, everyone thought he had the job. There was reports he got the job, and then all of a sudden things just fell apart. Of course, he doesn't want to work with Trent Baalke. That's been known out there. He wants to bring in his own GM, which is Adrian Wilson from the Cardinals organization. Can you explain to me where this came from and where all this kind of just put the pieces a little bit more together for those that aren't aware?
Well, you have to understand the search. I mean, the search is that Trent Baalke is part of the of their people who evaluating who's going to be hired, and you have a owner, which is Shad Khan, his son Tony Khan, and then you have Trent Baalke. And what makes this search different? Because I've heard through the grapevine, they're asking these candidates, "Can you work with Trent?" And to be
Ah,
honest, Byron was asked that question, and out of none of these guys on the list, whether it come out or not, I know from sources that Nathaniel Hackett, other than Byron, was the only other candidate who said point blank in front of Trent Baalke that he couldn't work with him. He couldn't. It wouldn't be a good fit.
mhm.
So Leftwich pretty much said the same thing. No slight to Trent Baalke, but when you're talking about trying to change a franchise who's 4-29 over 2 years, basically he insinuated to them that he would like to have his own guy to come in, Adrian Wilson, to come in and try to help construct this roster a little better.
Mhm.
You just have a situation, man. To be honest, Trent Baalke is not liked around the league. I mean, all the things that happened in San Francisco, all of Harbaugh and all that controversy and undercutting and power struggles and sending out, different types of leaks and all that to undercut and undermine. That stuff doesn't leave, man. It doesn't. When you in a situation in the NFL, the coaches are just like a club, and that when that word spread around that you can't trust them, and just because this happened in 216, it's not gonna go away just because his address changed.
Right.
And this is the thing that's circulating from all these candidates, that you don't want to take a job, especially you don't want to take a job where you feel like everybody is not aligned. I don't trust somebody in the facility, and you have a guy like Byron Leftwich. Byron don't have a timetable. He's 42 years old. He don't have a timetable when he has to be a head coach. You know, he could go back to Tampa and go into the next cycle next year, or he could. Who knows what may happen in Tampa? He could land the job eventually, and it probably wouldn't be a long wait. So you got a Jacksonville franchise who, oh yeah, he's only been a coach for 5 years. You know, he's got to take this job. You know, that's the way things have gone in this franchise. Doug Marrone didn't have any options. Okay, you elevated him from interim coach to head coach. So he's not, he's going to take everything that you have in this job because this is his last opportunity after what happened in Buffalo. You got a guy like Gus Bradley, who they had before, first time head coach, and they dictated terms. They dictated terms that in order for you to come in, you got to work with Dave Caldwell. And Byron stood up for himself. And I commend him, to be honest, because if he feels that it's not going to work in the situation that he feels he can be successful, you got to have a major roster reconstruction for this franchise to even get to be in a competitive situation in the AFC South. So you got to have major decisions. I mean, you can have the best coach in the world. You can't win in this league if you don't have the talent. And I know that quarterback, everybody around the country say, that Trevor Lawrence is great, but he's not a miracle worker. And you watch the playoffs, you can see how far, immediately what I see from the playoffs is just how far that this Jaguars franchise is from just competing, having a winning record, not talking about playoffs. Cincinnati, a lot of people in Jacksonville compare where it can happen in Cincinnati, it can happen in Jacksonville. But Cincinnati had a plan. They knew how to put pieces around that borough and facilitate it by putting speed on the field at the wideout positions. This franchise, I mean, you look, it just, you go with a plan, you change the plan. You go with a plan, you change the plan. And I'll say this, I mean, as bad as the situation happened here this year with Urban Meyer, distraction here, video here, the number one pick, second year in a row, three wins, one in 15 a year before, where Trent Baalke was a part of all that. So if you're going forward, you shouldn't have if any franchise have to have a clean house, it should be this one. You don't want to carry over anything from what happened over these last 2 years into a new chapter.
Right.
And we have an owner who just don't know how to build a franchise into a winning one. From the business side, he's a great owner, but from continuity, from hiring the right person, from having somebody with some football knowledge and football sense that's part of this search with experience at it, is not here. It's Trent Baalke, Tony Khan, his son, and him and the owner.
Not good. Not good. I did have a question for you as well. A few things I wanted to address. There's been a rumor out there that Baalke is spreading things to prevent Byron Leftwich from becoming a head coach. Is there any confirmation on any of that information?
We'll never know confirmation on that, but I would say this. I mean, I think he's cutthroat, and I'm going to say this on the record. I have to deal with him. It doesn't matter to me. But when you're dealing with a situation like this, 9 times out of 10, the reputation of what his reputation is the truth. You don't have this many people as candidates say I can't work for him with a job that's only 1 out of 32. So The problem with this whole search, Mike, is that he wants control of the rock. He want to be a GM. He wants to be the guy that say have final say so in roster decisions and carry out his job. The coaches feel that from his track record and from the track record of this franchise right now, after 2 years, he's not that type of he's not the person they want to work with. And I feel that Trent Baalke is a guy that when you got a power, basically they this is a wrestle, like they wrestling for power. Byron Leftwich, I don't think Trent Baalke would want to work for Byron, just from the fact that Byron said in that interview, I'd rather have my own guy be the GM. The problem is convincing this owner that you got to do something with Baalke. This has been it's been detrimental in their search to find. They're literally trying to find somebody willing to work alongside Trent. And you should not have a search. You should never have a search where a GM is bigger than the short-term, long-term priorities of your franchise.
Yikes.
And he's been a detriment to that. And you can't, if you going forward and you trying to build your franchise into a winner, you can't have somebody there's that much of a detriment. If the shoe fit, it fits.
Right.
It's too many people saying the same thing. As your question, has he said? Well, I've seen former players from the Jaguars, and they would probably be more privileged than me. Said that he's circumventing. He's whatever he's doing, he's trying to not have Brian Leftwich be the guy, be the head coach.
Got you. Boy, sounds like a real nasty situation. So, outside of Leftwich, who do you think is the candidate that they could potentially be leaning towards? Because I heard Vic Fangio, I've heard Hackett. Of course, he got hired in Denver, and now you've told me Doug Peterson as well. So, what is there any kind of thoughts on who could be the head coach there?
Well, you got to understand. Hey, this search has started over. Okay, you had Everfloss. He gone. Mm-hmm. You had Nathaniel Hackett, who was a finalist, and he's gone. So, and both those guys were the three finalists. It was Leftwich, Everfloss, and Hackett, and they both gone. So they restarted. Basically, they restarted the search. At this point, right now, I would say Doug Peterson could be that. I think he's moved up to the spot that if he can, that's when you're talking about Spielman now, coming from the Vikings and having an arrangement that's speculated now that he would be like the VP of football operations, and he basically would be Trent Baalke's boss. Now the way it looks, if we go back, is really no different from the request that Leftwich provided.
It isn't.
It's just that Doug, and I think now after you go 40, it's been 47 days since they fired Urban Meyer. So it's getting to the point now, I'm about to go to the Senior Bowl tomorrow. There's no coach they don't have a head coach to evaluate, prospects.
Right.
So it's of urgence to try to come up with something. My opinion is this. I don't think the owner of Jacksonville like to pay people if they're not working. Meaning, if he fires Trent Baalke, then what's left on his contract, whether he works in Jacksonville or not, he still he's responsible for that contract. So that's another issue. But I would think that Doug Peterson, second interview today, the speculation that Spielman is now into play. They have no relationship between Peterson and Spielman, but it's just the fact that it's just out of nowhere. I've even heard speculation that that I think even the NFL Network said that they've been in conversation with Spielman for weeks. Well, I don't believe that because he just a couple of weeks ago he was Minnesota's GM, and he obviously lost his job. But unless that's tampering, I don't think they've been speaking to each other for weeks. But I think as a compromise to address what the situation is that Bulky is an issue. How can we still keep him in this franchise, but be in a position that the head coach we hire would feel comfortable with the arrangement? I think they've come to the point now, a realization that in order for us to make a hire, we have to address this Bulky situation, and they may address it with Spielman as being like the head of football operations. But man, this thing is just so fluid. Byron Leftwich was they had even went to contract talks. That's just how serious it was like 5 days ago. And it just so fluctuated now that, I heard Jim Caldwell is still in the mix. In what way? I don't know. So
I'm shocked to hear that one.
Yeah, well, anything can happen in this situation, man. It's fluid. I don't think that the Jaguars have any idea at this point when they're going to make a hire, who they got in mind as a front runner, and I think they're looking for somebody that can have an agreement that I can work with Trent Baalke. And that's not the way you run a search.
Yeah. Also, I wanted to ask you as well. Is there any possibility that they come back to Byron Leftwich at all?
Well, he's still in the mix now. Sources tell me even today, as late as today, he's still in the mix. He's still a candidate. He's still in the mix. I wouldn't classify him as being a front runner or anything like that, but he is among the top 4 people that they're still considering. Now, will they go back to Byron Leftwich and say, because they haven't even made a request to interview Adrian Wilson with the Cardinals. So I don't see that as a possibility. If it doesn't work out with Doug Peterson, then maybe they could go back to Byron and say, how would you feel about this arrangement that we would have Spielman, we have a VP of football operations. It's not your guy, but you won't have to work directly under Trent Baalke, which could be in play,
Oh my goodness.
And I'll tell you this, from fan perspective, they want Leftwich. If any Jacksonville fan would want Leftwich. Some fans say the way the Jaguars are treating him, he'd probably be better off just finding another team to be a head coach for the way way this whole situation has been handled. The thing is, Mike, when you have a franchise that's not transparent, and then you hear things out of the blue, is maybe be leaked to the NFL Network or Schefter with ESPN. It's like this franchise is trying to put out fires, trying to, cut. They're still in damage control. And when you worried about public perceptions, you worried about Byron Leftwich, a guy only been a coach for 5 years, but coming in asking for this and that, and that's becoming a issue when you 1-15 and 3-14, over the last 2 seasons, and you put all this peripheral stuff into a coaching search, when the bottom line is you got to get you got to get this franchise on track. And when I have an issue, when you put all this sidetrack stuff and it comes ahead of just get the best guy, get the best guy for the job. You know, that's the bottom line. It ain't about favors. It's not about this. Get the best qualified guy that fit what you need for your franchise to turn it around. And you got a franchise here that's like it's dysfunctional. It was a dysfunctional season and a dysfunctional search. You interview 11, 12 guys, and you making requests like the Rams offensive coordinator. If you had any interest in him, then you would have put that request in during the 2-week window for the final 2 weeks of the regular season. And then
Right.
out of nowhere, he's a candidate that you want to speak to, but you fumbled the ball in December, and now you can't talk to him for 2 weeks. That is probably the best example of how this search has been. It's been one nightmare out of this is the disaster. I can't even say it anymore. I've never seen a search run like this one, because I don't want to be long-winded, but I'll tell you this, knowing searches in the NBA that I covered, you start the search immediately after they fired Urban Meyer. They should have set the course, gathered as a group, say, put 10 things that you're looking for that needs to be fixed in this organization. Then get about a list of 8, 9 people. Cut the list down to about 6. Start the interview process. If the person that's out of that 6 fit the 6 or 8 things that you need for this organization, you got your guy. But here, they could change tomorrow. It'll be somebody else. It's just a search that's gone out of. There's no rhyme and reason. It's dysfunctional, and they have no clue what they're looking for because the search has not been. It has not been handled right.
Now, okay, we're February. It's beginning of February.
All right.
If you had to put your finger on it, when do you think they hire a new head coach?
I don't think that. To me, they may not hire a coach till after the Super Bowl.
Wow.
They might wait for the Rams offensive coordinator because I heard they interested in McConnell. They got a serious interest, and they may not pull that switch until they speak to him, whether he be a top candidate or not. I just feel at this point, if you wanted Doug Peterson at this point, he was the first guy you interviewed on December the 28th. You would have made that move. Byron Leftwich, if you're working on a contract and then all of a sudden it's pulled, well, we gotta open up the search again, then you know what I'm saying, man. It's just like they don't have a clue how, and who's to say Byron has lost interest? I mean, who's to say that could happen? That we can go back to Byron, and he said, "No, I'll pass. I'll just go back to Tampa and be the offensive coordinator and wait for my opportunity to come again."
Or he could go to New Orleans because they did request an interview with him.
Yeah, and he's going to have opportunity now. He's going to have opportunity next year, and I'm hearing things like, well, a guy with only 5 years as assistant shouldn't dictate terms. Like, come on, man. So as soon as he goes 1-15, have a losing situation in Jacksonville, and all the blame gonna be placed on Leftwich. So you sometimes you have to look out on, is this a good situation for me, or it's not a good situation for me? And if it's not a good situation for me, this is what I want in order for me to take this job. And that's basically, I mean, who can fault him for that? I mean, you can't. I mean, this is not like you going to coach the Pittsburgh Steelers or the Rams or even the Titans. You have to have some concessions to just put yourself in a winning situation. There's a reason why the Jaguars have had 10 losing seasons in 11 years. And it ain't all about what's happened on the field. It's about the
Right.
structure. It's about you can't win without not having type of harmony in the building. You can't have one guy calling the shots and then another guy pulling another guy down. You got to get all that out the building, man. And that's the detriment of why this franchise, and it's a reflection of this search. It's too much power control and I want this here, or the GM don't get along with this guy, and you got candidates around here scared, not scared, but just don't find this job attractive because of the potential of a guy like Trent Baalke can undercut him. The stuff in San Francisco is real. I mean, leaks went out, and he's perceived around the league as not being a cooperative guy and just not being a guy willing to work. And who want a GM who wants to focus, but when the problems come, it's somebody else's fault.
Oh no,
that's
definitely don't want that.
What make right. That you don't want that.
Right. Well, I do have one other question for you, and it was thrown out by a viewer and a listener as well. Why is Khan so dedicated to Trent Baalke? Can anybody answer that question?
No, man. Man, there's a Twitter that there's actually former players from the Jaguars are asking that question on Twitter. Like, what did he do? Did he? What does he have on the ownership of the Jaguars? And to me, I have no clue. I have no clue of. Now I can tell you what sources said. Sources told me that they feel that Trent Baalke has not had an opportunity to run football operations alone, like putting his own stamp on the situation. He came in.
Do they really want that?
Huh?
Said, do they really want that?
No. Well, I mean, most franchises wouldn't want that. I'll say this: if Trent Baalke right now, say this on the record, if Trent Baalke was available, meaning that how many teams you think would knock on his door to even try to interview him? I'll say zero.
Yeah, Brownsville hero.
Because if you look at the situation when he left San Francisco in 2016. From 2016 to 2019, he didn't get a job offer. The only one that offered him a job, I think he worked for the NFL, but no team offered him a job as a GM, scout, anything until the Jaguars knocked on his door to be director of player personnel. That tells you a lot. But
well, man, that's all I got for you, man. I mean, I was wondering what was going on with the whole coaching situation. I knew something with Trent Baalke had to be involved in it, and you definitely answered a lot of questions that I had about what's going on down there. And God bless you for keeping up with this coaching search, and hopefully one of these days they'll decide on somebody.
Just think that the team you got in Tennessee is not run like the one in Jacksonville. I say that for any fan, any organization. This is not the way an organization should be run, and I say that on record. They got to get it together, man. You can't be a franchise where it's like a reality show. You have no direction, and you don't know what direction is going to go from Monday through Friday. That's not the way you run a franchise.
Gotcha. Well, thank you for coming on to giving us some insight to what's going on down there, because plenty of people want to know what is going on down there with that coaching search. Can you tell everybody where they can find you and what are you working on?
No problem. I'm working at all my stuff go on Jacksonville.com under that Jaguar section. And my Twitter is John Reid 64. I'm about to head out here to the Senior Bowl, try to see if I can find anyone from the Jaguars. I don't think they have any representatives out there to this thing other than scouts, that the existing scouts. I don't think Trent Baalke, anybody like that. So I think we still in the search, trying to see where this situation is going before they make a hire.
Well, I did read a rumor out there that he was looking for an assistant GM there so he could be on the field more. So
yeah,
I don't know how true that is.
Well, anything goes at this point. Even if he was to get fired, I mean, I would not be shocked at that. I mean, I'm to the point that I will literally at this point have no clue who they're going to hire, even if Trent Baalke stays or goes. Nobody, we're all speculating, but we have no clue how this thing is going to play out. He could end up being a scout. Who knows?
Well, I'll say this, y'all get y'all a little board and a pool together, put money in it on who's going to be the coach, man. Somebody going to win something.
Yeah, well, I'm sure Vegas got some odds and numbers out right now on this one. They need to.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on. For everybody, this Florida Times Union's Jags beat reporter, John Reid. You've been watching and listening to Touring the AFC South with your host, Mike Patton. We're out.